This is Dr. S. the Legend. I want to talk about the end of immigration as we know it. We are now in a counter-immigration period. Now, I put together this conversation last week prior to the shooting in Washington, D.C. of the two West Virginia National Guard individuals, which was done by an immigrant. Anyway, why are we in a counter-immigration period? Well, the Biden administration opened the borders completely. Anyone and everyone could come in. Anyone that claimed asylum would be let into the country and just simply let loose, and at a future date maybe show up for their hearing or maybe not show up. So Donald Trump campaigned on closing the border. That was his main talking point in the election. And elected, he's basically closed the border, continuing to build the wall between the United States and Mexico. Regarding political asylum, it has always been the case, prior to the Biden administration, that if you want political asylum, you have to apply for it in a third country. You just don't pop into the United States and ask for political asylum. I'll give you an example, and there's many examples. After the war in Vietnam, which ended in April 1975, there were lots of refugees from what was called Indochina, Vietnamese, Cambodians, Laotians, and they all wanted to come to the United States. Well, not everybody, but these were individuals that had supported the United States in the war in Vietnam, or the war in Indochina, as we call it. So they had to go to a third country, which was Thailand. And they stayed there between 1975 and 1980, so we could vet them individually, and gradually we let most of them into the United States and granted them political asylum. So now, in order to apply for political asylum, you have to do it through a third country. No more walking across the border and asking for asylum and coming into the United States. So let me go over to some legal terms. We have what is known as legal aliens. You are not a citizen and you're legally in the United States. Then we have illegal aliens, meaning you're not legal in the United States. Some people call them immigrants. Some people call them migrants. Some call them undocumented persons. But the legal term is illegal alien. Now, how do you get to be an illegal alien? Generally speaking, number one, cross the border from Mexico illegally, sneak into our country. And number two, to a lesser extent, cross the Canadian border into the United States. A third way is to be granted a visa, a temporary permission to come in the United States as a tourist, as a worker, and a student. And if you overstay your visa, you are now an illegal alien. All illegal aliens are subject to deportation because they're not in the United States legally, so thus we deport them. Now I want to talk about, just mention the whole issue of birthright citizenship, which I'll go into shortly. Birthright citizenship is a concept where, regardless of your parents' status, whether they're legal or illegal, if you're born in the United States, you're an automatic American citizen. That's the concept. And by the way, there is no birthright citizenship in any of the European countries. Generally speaking, you have to have one or both parents a citizen of that country in particular. Now, all immigration is not bad. I don't want to give the wrong impression. But a model of immigration policy would be Canada in the north. Canada likes immigrants, but they want them to be skilled. They want them to be educated. They want them to have considerable amount of funds, or all of the above. They have selective immigration. They don't want people coming into Canada and become welfare states and be dependent upon the Canadian government. So, the question becomes, and this has to do maybe with the shooting down in Washington, why do we let people in the United States where American citizens cannot and should not go to their countries? I'll repeat that. Why do we let in people from countries that U.S. citizens cannot go to and should not go to? We have what's called the State Department. And the State Department issues warnings. And the number one, the worst warning is a 4 red star warning. That says if you're an American citizen, do not go to these countries. We cannot protect you. These countries are unsafe. So countries can't be unsafe. Generally, the people are unsafe, if you think about it. In the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, they list Gaza as a country, Libya, Sudan, Yemen, Somalia, and there's some other countries, Burma, North Korea, Belarus, which is next to Russia, which is also on the list, Ukraine, of course they had a war there, in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti and Venezuela. There are also other countries that are not, these are the 4-star ones. There's some that are 3-star. I'm not going to go into that. So, how can we adequately vet people from these 4-star countries that we should not go to? How do we vet them? And I don't have the answer to that. Maybe we shouldn't vet them at all. It has been estimated that there are anywhere between 15 and 30 million illegal people in the United States. That includes their children. There's various groups that put a number on it. Now, in recent days, the term of the media and the Democratic Party has come up with the concept of affordability. So, I'm not totally sure what that means. I guess you can't afford something, or something is higher priced than it should be. Now, I think this has a direct relationship to the people that are here illegally in the United States. And maybe if they weren't here, things would be more affordable. Illegals live in housing, apartments, homes, whatever. If they didn't, that would free up housing. They get medical care. Somebody's paying for it, probably the government. That means medical care might be cheaper. They get food stamps, the SNAP program in many states. So maybe food would be cheaper. They receive welfare payments. Maybe the government wouldn't tax everyone as much. They live in sanctuary cities, primarily in sanctuary states. Primarily certain states, California, New Jersey, New York, Illinois, Texas, and many of them become what is known as indentured servants, meaning they work for people under the table, they work for cash, they get paid a minimal amount of money, and they can't get out of their situation because they're not here legally, and they don't have proper documents, and therefore they're working for less money and probably hurting Americans because they're working for less money than American citizens would work for. And also, quite a few of them gets sex trafficked, and this is not very good for females, adult females, younger females. Let me just mention something about deportation. Under the Trump administration, obviously people have been deported. There's also several million people that have self-deported. That means they voluntarily have left the United States. Now, if you self-deport, then you can apply to come back to the United States legally. Once we deport you, that means you can't come back legally. You get on the do not fly list, and you cannot come back. So that's the reason why several million people have self-deported, because they want to come back legally. Now, Europe has had a similar problem with not only people there as illegal aliens, but with a changing in the population. In fact, Europe's problems are greater than the United States. So let me run through a couple countries and show you what's going on there. The first country I want to talk about is Germany. Under their former Chancellor Angela Merkel, she let in millions of people from Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. Now there are in Germany 16 million foreign-born people out of 80 million ethnic Germans. That's 20% of the population. Some of those people are there legally, some are there illegally, and the German government has just mentioned that they want the Syrians, 1 million of them, who came during the Syrian civil war, they want them to go back to Syria. Well, the Syrians don't want to leave. So you got a problem. You also have a problem of assimilation. And that's, in addition, Germany does not have birthright citizenship. As a result of the millions of foreign individuals coming to Germany, a new political party has been formed in recent years. It's called the AfD Party. It stands for, what does it stand for? Alternative for Deutschland. They have recently got 20% of the votes. They want all the immigrants gone from Germany. They want the 16 million foreign-born out. In many parts of Germany, they've received the majority of the vote. This is a new political party. Let me look at the United Kingdom, also known as Great Britain. They have 11 million foreign-born out of 70 million people. As a result, in recent years, a new anti-immigrant party is formed called the Reform Party. And the latest poll indicates in the United Kingdom that they are the most popular party presently. You have to understand, historically, there have been two political parties in the United Kingdom, Labour and Conservative parties. Now, you got the new Reform Party, and the new Reform Party is, I need some water. Thank you very much. Agua. So the new Reform Party is a third party. It's the most popular party presently. And we don't know what's going to happen with an election because there's always been two political parties. Now the United Kingdom has three political parties. One more country I want to cover. I could cover them all. That's Sweden. 35% of the population of Sweden are non-ethnic Swedes. Many of them have come from Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, Iran. They form criminal gangs. They sell drugs. They commit homicides. They don't get assimilated. And Sweden used to be the country in Europe with the lowest homicide rate. Now it's number 10 out of 40. How did this happen? Well, immigration. I want to move on to birthright citizenship. And I told you what that is before. A belief. It's not the law. As an attorney, I'm going to tell you it's not the law. People think it's the law. But it may not be the law. Again, birthright citizenship means that you're born in the United States, you automatically become a citizen, regardless of the legal status of your parents. And I think there's a high probability that the Supreme Court is going to rule on this issue this year. And if they do, they'll probably reach their decision on June the 30th, because that's the day they get out of Dodge. Because Donald Trump has issued an executive order on January 20th, 2025, his first day in office, that says no birthright citizenship if the mother is illegal, and no birthright citizenship for anyone with a temporary visa if the mother is a temporary visa, tourist, student, work visa, and then assuming in both those cases the father is not a citizen. Now, those that believe in birthright citizenship talk about the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, passed in 1868. I'll read it to you. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, all legal people and historical people know that this amendment only applied to those that had previously been slaves, because it was passed along with the 13th and the 15th Amendment, which ended slavery and gave the former slaves the right to vote. So the 14th Amendment, from an original perspective, only gave citizenship to the former slaves. There is a federal statute, 8 U.S.C. 1401A, which basically mirrors the wording of the 14th Amendment. The key in the 14th Amendment is to look to the term subject to the jurisdiction thereof. It sounds legalese. I'll repeat that. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So let me give you the common definition of subject to the jurisdiction thereof, because a lot of people don't know what this means. Under the complete and political authority of a government, owing its allegiance and being subject to its laws. You can't be partially subject to it and not under the jurisdiction of any foreign power. So again, owing complete allegiance and not being under the jurisdiction of a foreign power. So if you're here illegally in the United States, it is my legal opinion as an attorney for 40 years, you're not subject to the jurisdiction thereof of the United States, because you hold a foreign passport. You're a foreign citizen. You're not here legally. So any child born here would not be legal, would not be a citizen. Also, those that are here on temporary visas, they're citizens of foreign countries. And they owe allegiance to their foreign country because they're just here temporarily. How do we know they're here temporarily? Because when they come in customs, they show their passport from the foreign country as a tourist, as a student, as a work visa. They don't show an American passport. It's a foreign passport. There is also a Supreme Court case from 1898 that deals with the issue of birthright citizenship. And the Supreme Court's going to look at this. And the main issue was whether or not this individual, Mr. Ark, whether his parents were legally in the United States. And for all intents and purposes, they were probably legally in the United States. I'll talk about this in a minute. So in the Ark case, the Supreme Court said this. This is 1898, a long time ago. By the way, since the Supreme Court took this case, it means that they now can take all future cases having to do with birthright citizenship. They now have subject matter jurisdiction. I'm quoting the decision in Ark, A-R-K, 1898. The 14th Amendment affirms the ancient and fundamental rule of citizenship by birth within the territory in the allegiance and under the protection of the country, including all children here born of resident aliens, excepting children of diplomats and children of Native Americans. Of course, they changed Native American in 1924. So they already, in ARC, they created exceptions, and there's that word again. Allegiance. If you're a foreign citizen, whether you're here illegally or you're on a visa, who do you owe your allegiance to? You certainly don't owe your allegiance to the United States simply, well, you have a foreign passport, you're a foreign citizen. So, it looks like in the ARC case, just from a factual point of view, again, Mr. ARC's parents, I went into it in a previous podcast, they were definitely resident aliens. They were not here illegally. You have to remember, this is a recent phenomenon. And I'm going to go into this, just describe this in detail. You have to understand, in our history, it's only been recently in our history we have people coming into the country illegally. It's only recent in our history that we have people coming to the United States in any kind of numbers, at least illegally, in any kind of numbers, as tourist visas, work visas, student visas. Let me give you a little history here. We have what was known as the Great Migration from Europe. It started in 1865 and ended around 1920. Huge numbers of people came to the United States from Europe. How did they get here? Well, they didn't come from Canada, they didn't come from Mexico, they didn't fly in. They came by ship. And the way the United States was able to vet these people is it was the obligations of the shipping companies. They had to vet the people in Europe. Because if they let someone in who was considered an undesirable, if they were sickly, if they were politically undesirable, then it was under the shipping company's obligation to take them back to Europe and pay for it. So the European shipping companies, particularly the Cunard Line, was very selective as to the immigrants that could come into the United States. And again, you didn't have the, it was difficult during this period of time. I think it's almost impossible unless you stowed away on a ship, which is highly unlikely, and somehow snuck into the United States. No. I mean, maybe a couple, but no, everyone came by ship, and they were vetted. What does our immigration history look like? Well, from 1607 Jamestown to 1965, this country was made up of 88% what we call white or people of European ancestry, and 12% African Americans, descendant of slaves that were brought to the 13 colonies. I'm not going to go into a whole thing with slavery, but in any case, and they were here, both groups have been here a long time. Now, the demographics have changed in the United States since the law was changed in 1965. Now we have anywhere from 25 to 30% others from Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, West Africa. In the past, those that came from Europe in the Great Migration were supposed to assimilate. Yes, they could keep some of their older traditions, but their loyalty was expected to stay in the United States, not in the country they came from. And they were expected to speak English and generally accept American values. This was assimilation, accepting Western ideas and European culture. So, since 1965, as I mentioned before, the people are not from Europe, so they come from other cultures and other backgrounds. That doesn't make them undesirable. It just means that their assimilation is going to be a bit more difficult to bring about. And I would just say, bring on the immigrants, but have them come legally and use the Canadian model. Yeah, you can come from Asia and Africa and Latin America, but come with a skill set, come with an education, come with some money in the bank. Don't be dependent on the state. Don't be dependent on welfare payments. Now, there was a recent Supreme Court, a partial decision issued by Justice Kavanaugh, at least he wrote it. And this is the reason I think the Supreme Court is going to deal with the issue of birthright citizenship. Because Justice Kavanaugh says there are problems associated with people being here illegally. He says, quoting him, social and economic problems. And he has, in this opinion, it's called Noem v. Perdomo, September 8th, 2025. I believe he has the support of the majority of the justices on the Supreme Court. And this leads to my belief that the Supremes will take up the issue of birthright citizenship and probably limit it in some way. Certainly of the children of parents that are not here legally. Keep in mind, Europe does not have birthright citizenship. Because what happens is that people come here illegally, they have a child that's born here, and they play the system. They use this as a mechanism to bring in other family members, bring in the parents, bring in others, and use this as a gateway to establish residency for other individuals. People will play the system. There's also the case, which I'm very much aware of, you have wealthy women, not your usual poor illegal immigrants, but wealthy women from many countries that come here pregnant. They come here pregnant, and their sole purpose is to have their child being birthed here, and then the child is a citizen, and then they all go back to their original country. And they use this as an insurance policy. If things get questionable in their country, then the child, along with the parents, can emigrate to the United States because the child was born in the United States. Again, they're playing the system. So it's just not a question of poor immigrants coming here illegally and establishing birthright citizenship. All right, so I just want to conclude here and mention about my podcast here, which is called Conversations with Dr. S. the Legend. That's me. And I also want to present my email, if you would. It'd be nice if it wasn't upside down. You would want to get in touch with me for any reason, hopefully a good reason. And finally, as many of you can see, I am a fan of the rodeo, and this is the artist that does all these fantastic Western rodeo paintings. You can look on the website, and I'm sure the artist would be more than happy to talk to you about adding this to your art collection. So, this is Dr. S. the Legend signing off.